Now, here's Mr. Midnight, Jack Delroy.
Oh, good evening, Night Owls, and thank you for allowing me into your living rooms once again.
Did anybody notice that any of the people who were dressed up the like skeleton and the ghost, they were acting really weird?
You know, as we talk about secret societies and things like that, like there are always these people, like even the, you know, these people that are dressed up that are keeping an eye on Jack Delroy. You know?
What you're about to see
You okay, Jack?
is profoundly disturbing and shocking.
Did he do something in the woods that caused all of this?
Exactly. There's a lot of questions.
Did he cause the death of his wife and that girl?
You get out there, Mr. Midnight, and you knock him dead.
Yeah, we just, whatever decisions we made, we thought we'll just embrace it, lean in, go all the way.
Yeah.
No half measures.
Late night with the devil.
Good evening, campers, streamers, and babysitters. And yes, we are here, but we're not by ourselves this time. No, we have pulled Alex from beyond the void, out of the void, and yeah, he is here, and we are here to splatter him or whatever we want to say about that.
There we are.
Anyway,
You didn't tell me about that part.
I wanted to put both of our names in there, but it came out a little weird. Either way, we got some business to take care of, boys. We've got a big film coming out this weekend. By the time this is up, it will be in theaters. We're recording this Thursday night as the preview screening should be wrapping up. And yeah, we're talking Late Night with the Devil. But first things first, we got to talk about this movie.
Yes.
Because this thing was very, very good. I think Luke and
It's
I
been received well.
Yes, Luke and I we both gave it our highest rating on the show. We gave it a must
Really?
see. Yeah, we enjoyed the flick. Alex, since you are our guest on this episode, feel free to enlighten our audience who may have not seen your review, which if you haven't, you should, because there's a fucking awesome intro on that thing.
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot. Yeah.
Definitely go check it out and then come back and finish this, because like yeah, it's so good. I was so jealous that you got to that first, because like damn, that's fun and creative, but you've been doing a lot of that. So
I will preface this. When I watched this movie, it was like literally at midnight. So you know how apropos for the show that was airing at midnight in the 70s called Night Owls.
You were a
so
night owl.
You know, I was up at like 4 a.m. doing this review, and I loved it. I loved it, and I had a really good time with it. I'm always a little reserved with like jumping too high. It is definitely one of my favorite movies this year, without a doubt. I was a huge fan of the aesthetics, although I feel like the idea is kind of like us old folks. I say us old folks, you know, I'm really not that old, but it is an older idea to do something from the 70s, because the younger generation has no idea what that was like. Mm-hmm. So in a way, you know, it's a really kind of risky idea, but a very super aesthetic idea. And David Dastmalchian fucking owns that. He and everybody that was on that movie, and even the audience member that stands up and says something in the movie, it's just so tightly packed with authenticity, and just the vibe of it is so authentic and original in a way that even though there's other movies that have done it, it still feels like ahead of the game, ahead of the curve, as far as like the idea, you know what I mean? Like it is definitely, nothing's been done exactly like it. I want to preface that, you know, by the way, but yeah, I thought it was fun, authentic, very perfect. It's like the weird blend of, it's like a dark style comedy, but also very serious in a way too, as like reality gets stripped away from the movie as it progresses and gets worse and worse and worse. There was I had a little bit of reservations about some of the end, because I wanted so much more. So I had to kind of stew with that a little bit and kind of like really figure out why I felt that way when I did my reviews. So I didn't give it the highest score that I've ever given, but I very rarely do with many movies until at least the second watch. And I did a second watch today, and I feel like I'm right exactly where I was, which I do a 10 scale. So I did an 8.5 out of 10, but it is solid and it's very unique. And that's why I gave it even more than an 8, because it just feels really original.
Luke and I, we've given, we're, I would say, a bit more generous than I think we maybe thought we would be with, our must-sees. But I think the real coveted piece to this, at least for me and my standings, so I can inform the audience, is just that right now this holds its spot as my favorite film of the year. I know it's only March, but it's up there for me. And Luke, where are you sitting with this, just as a refresher?
With this one, it's still my favorite of the year, looking back on everything that we've seen thus far. It's just one of those films where this was something that was highly anticipated for me, just knowing what the concept was going to be, this exorcism on live television with David Dastmalchian as that lead, and thinking this was going to be a traditional narrative. And then as soon as we got that injection, so to speak, of this found footage idea, my question was, how is this going to be achieved? Because you only kind of get that aspect of the characters of they're always on, rather than kind of getting that peek behind the curtain as to how are we going to get that character development? How are we going to resonate with these characters? And then, I'll be honest, we all had heard that, Stephen King kind of had, been, had given his grace to this one. And, with that, sometimes it's hit or miss, where it's like, well, sometimes it is really well done. Sometimes it's just kind of, we don't know how that's really going to look. So I didn't really know how this was going to look. And I will say, from that aspect of this master tape and what they were able to achieve, I got to say, stop motion is up there for me in terms of that uniqueness of a film. Frogman is another one that's really interesting to me. And I got to say, but I think this one just edges out just a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely... it's pretty much firing on all cylinders for me and stuff that I enjoy. I'm a big 70s fan, especially the music. I listen to a lot of 70s rock and stuff like that. So it's something where there's not like a ton of variety. It's not like a Guardians film or something where it's like you just got a ton of different hits and songs. But it's one of those things where it's like they really play into that aesthetic well. I'm thoroughly convinced. Honestly, David's great. But if you had put a no-name actor in there and really filled this thing with no names, there are moments where you probably could have sold this as an actual, like, hey, this was an old 70s TV show. It was so well done. But yeah, I think going from this point here, we're going to talk about some of our likes, and this is where we're really going to get into spoilers. We're just going to start kind of letting the chains off now. Obviously, it's a spoiler review, so you guys should already have seen it. Because I don't want to spoil it for you. I think knowing less is more with this one. So definitely do that. And I do want to say right off the top here that Luke and I did get to sit down with the directors. So, we got to speak with Cameron and Colin Cairnes about the film. And you're going to be seeing a bit of that interview as we go along in our spoilers here. So definitely enjoy that, and let's get into it, fellas. And
screenwriting has my heart, so anytime we get a chance to talk to directors and writers, I absolutely love it. Especially a writing team. I'm always curious in terms of when you look at a collaboration like this, how is that kind of divvied up in a sense? Do you guys have already kind of a workflow already, or is it kind of just whatever interests you and you kind of piece it all together?
Yeah, it's a bit of all of the above. I mean, I don't think we've ever really settled on a formula, certainly not a winning formula. It seems to be different every time we do it, although we're now finding a little bit more structure in what we do. Well, not that we did for late night, but we're now sort of, we'll do a treatment or we'll get a beat sheet out, and we'll just... Because, I think that was probably one of the issues going into writing late night, is we didn't really know where it was going, which can be a good thing. But that's why it probably took so long for us to, get it up on screen, because it was 7 or 8 years in the writing, I would think, and
not full time, but
no,
but yeah, we're much more structured now. But sometimes just starting the script and seeing where it goes can lead to surprising, options and sort of weird narrative leaps, and that certainly happened on this script. But yeah, it's when you sort of get to a point where it's like, okay, I can't see a way out of this, that you got to backtrack and perhaps even start again. So that kind of happened on this one. To be honest, it was a real labor of love.
But yeah, I mean, the divvying up of work, I mean, it's pretty much 50-50. One of us might start the script and do a bunch of pages and then send it on, and then he will continue from there and send it back, and then we'll edit each other, and it's just big back and forth. I don't think we ever really sit in the same room and write. We will when we're just talking about the film and just sort of prepping to write. But but generally, we're just sullen writers sitting in our room.
I'm going to start with you, Alex. What are some of the positives, some of your favorite moments in the movie?
I mean, first off, the movie just grabs you, and it's just like, we're going. Here we go. And I don't mean in the, okay, it's happening now, guys. Like, it's more of just how they did it. There's just like an artistry to the like opening with the whole biography of Jack Delroy, which was just so perfect. And it was like the best conduit to do all the backstory.
I didn't know that was at all how they were going to go with it. So on that opened up and it was the biography angle, I was like, oh, this is great. I love this. It's so
good, dude. Like, it's like you're watching like a nowadays kind of adaptation of that whole fucking thing, but then it kind of like spins off like you're in that world in the 70s, and then it's like you get a couple of different vibes. And the initial one was really good, and what really struck me is, and I want to mention this, is that Roscoe James Irwin and Glenn Richards, who did the soundtrack and the score and the music and everything for this, fantastic. I don't think that this movie would have popped as well if it wasn't for that music and that sort of tone that they had with the vibe and everything like that. I mean, it's all the parts equally, but yeah, the initial thing for me, I wouldn't say it's necessarily my favorite thing in the movie, but that is definitely one of the things. And this isn't one of those movies that's like everything's happening all over the place every second of the movie. It's just a very competent made film that rests not just on the horror and the scary bits, but all this other stuff that make it such a great film, in my opinion. So
absolutely. And Luke, what are some of your favorite moments?
Well, we mentioned in our review, like Alex just said, that opening, that little mini documentary of kind of getting to know Jack Delroy and kind of really setting the table for everything. It's one of those things, it becomes really fast paced. You're in the story right at the very start. But as you're always waiting for the horror to get there, I think one of the things that for me was so noticeable, as soon as those doors open and we're introduced to Jack Delroy and that opening monologue, because again, my question was how are we going to resonate with these characters? And to see David Dastmalchian kind of give that bit, and it feels so natural. It really does feel like you're watching this late night television host, of him reading these bits and kind of talking to the audience and really getting ingrained in that idea of this Night Owls TV show. And just that interplay with him and his sideman, Gus. And and just the way that they kind of play off each other, and kind of, I don't know, I think going into it, you're waiting for the horror, but then you're almost put at ease because of that interplay, and you're almost thinking, I think Alex mentioned it, where it's kind of like these comedy bits where it's like you almost feel like you're watching this dark comedy, and then as soon as we kind of start heightening that, we're getting our guess of that, those supernatural elements start playing. But I got to say, as soon as those doors opened and we're listening to David Dastmalchian as Jack Delroy, it had me captivated from the very start.
Yeah, I really love the bit where he sneaks up on Gus as the ghost behind him. Like, that is so television TV host. It's corny as hell.
And totally,
you just know it's gonna work. And yeah, I gotta say, like, some of my favorite pieces to this. I mean, I thought that the character of Gus just really brought that groundedness of the actual situation, where he felt like kind of a bit of our conduit in the story in some ways, where it's kind of like he's playing from the audience perspective, like, hey, shit is going down, we need to talk about this, or we need to stop the show or whatever. And I just thought that Gus, or sorry, his name's not Gus, Risa Turi did a fantastic job. I mean, seriously, when you're going up against the performance that David Dastmalchian gives in this film, it means a lot to really be able to stand toe to toe with him, I'd say. And one of the bits I wanted to know if you guys knew this, I recognized the voice of the narrator.
Oh yeah.
And the fact that it's Michael Ironside
Yeah.
is doing the narrator, and it fits so perfectly. It's a nostalgic voice for those of us who've seen all those movies. I mean, obviously Total Recall and all these other great ones he's been in, but like
it's never changed, but it's also like gotten finer and more like vintage, and like,
and it sells that is a very good way to put it, vintage. Like it just sells that vintage voice really well. Like his narration is just spot on. It's perfect.
Yeah, it was really good.
My first one is actually going to center around your lead there, David Dastmalchian. Did you guys have anybody in mind in particular for the great Jack Delroy, or was this just, how did you guys meet him?
Yeah, so in the writing, we were really, I think we were channeling, all the great talk show hosts of that era. Probably Dick Cavett more than anything like that for me when I was writing.
Yeah, for sure. I
You
mean, we were picturing that urbane,
witty, adult, sophisticated, a little bit of a cynical edge to him. More so than the Carson sort of, So no, in our heads, it helped thinking of those guys, and that helped sort of situate it in the 70s as well. Just having watched a lot of, just immersed ourselves in their shtick. I think that helped with writing their dialogue and their attitudes. So we weren't really thinking of any particular actor until we had producers on board, and it felt like we had momentum, and there was, we weren't quite green lit, I guess. When we knew we had backing, but we just needed to get that great actor to get it across the line. And then it's all the conversations of, the producers sort of suggesting all the big A-list names. It's like, well, we're on a budget here. And then, Cam fortunately had this brainwave that David, could be our guy, with his love of genre and horror in particular.
Yeah. I'd read an article he'd written about regional horror hosts in Fango. And yeah, it just, you got to sense this guy not only loved genre, but he knew that sort of hosting TV world as well. So yeah, there was just so many ingredients, that seemed right.
It just felt like there was real simpatico with him and his tastes, and plus he's just a fucking excellent actor, and you love everything he does. Like, he might only be in a film for a couple of minutes, but he's always a standout. He nails a character, and that's the hardest thing to do for an actor, to come on and steal a scene, or to impress upon you that this guy exists. So it's like, well, if you can do that in these smaller, interesting roles, what could he do with this meaty leading role? So we had a really good feeling, and even with that, it went better than we could ever have imagined. It was just so, like, in the rehearsals before we started shooting, and we just started reading lines from the script, and it just felt, we're in really good hands here.
Alex, what are some of the moments, I guess, if we want to kind of get towards more of the spoilery bits with, I guess, that third act? I know that's been a little bit controversial for people. From what I've seen, it kind of seems like you're on board or you're off. I would say I was thoroughly on board with the third act. If we kind of want to tee it up a little bit, you can kind of talk about what's been going on, and we'll just kind of round robin the whole third act here.
Okay, well, so the third act is pretty much when they kick off doing where they tie up June, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And that's where things get weird. And this is where I think the character Gus really kind of shines, because they really kind of show you how he's kind of a punching bag a little bit. in the background, in the sort of in between stuff that they do, the black and white, which I love. That's just another thing I love about this movie. I'm sorry. I love how they go to box format when you're watching it live, and then it's like the reel to reel, like footage, found footage sort of style, like, you know, like video or not video, film. And then it's like, and then at the very end when he's in the like spiritual world, it's like letterboxed.
I personally feel like aspect ratio, not to cut you off, is like it can be a big gimmick in a lot of films, but like it's so purposeful here.
It didn't
and
feel
you
like
really
it
feel
stuck
the
out,
tone
or
in each
it
point.
just blended right. It just felt right.
Absolutely, it was seamless in my mind.
I love. I really like how the character of Carmine, is his name? Carmichael, sorry. I like how he is kind of like starting to doubt himself and everything, but I think I really like that whole thing where they're like kind of doing the hypnosis part.
Yeah.
The hypnosis part really tripped me the hell out, and it just kind of added this layer of ingenuity into the story, and like how the storytelling is, and how it kind of preys on the viewer, because it's kind of like trying to debunk things at the same time, because they go back to look at the footage, and that whole situation is like really cool. Plus the gore effects on him. Like, I mean, have you ever seen anybody gut themselves with worms pouring out like that? That's like so cool. And it was coming out of his neck and then out of his eye. I just love that part, and I love that they incorporated the audience and like people at home, because it kind of like writes off like how this memory or this thing kind of was overlooked, and kind of muddles the reality of the situation, and maybe why people don't think, oh, it was the devil, or was it?
It does, and I like that perspective there, Luke. I know that was one of the bits that we kept talking about, was that worm scene. You want to dive into that a little bit?
It's so well done. As soon as we get to that exorcism with June, and then we get into the hypnosis, which is absolutely so well done, and then we kind of get back into like looking at the tape, going back and looking at it again, and seeing Gus kind of what we had seen initially, and then seeing, you know, that juxtaposition of now seeing nothing. I absolutely love the way that was done, because it is something that's so unique that, you know, I think at that point I started thinking, where is this going to go when we're going to replay everything with June, and what that unveiling is going to look like. But, you know, looking at that Gus scene with the worms, we already had that late 70s aesthetic, and I'm a sucker for it, to be honest. I think they nailed it. And then, you know, going into those practical effects, where it's like, you know, we all have an eye for it. You can tell that, you know, it is a prosthetic on there. But for me, it's something that, you know, I think I love the film even more because I can get lost into it as this period piece. It feels authentic to me. So it's something where I'm eager to go back and watch again. I did watch it twice already, and I absolutely love that scene of just being, you know, the close-up of the worms falling out of his guts. I think is just, you know, it's something that is going to be so timeless for me. And, you know, just something that for me is so minor that people will look over, but for me, it's like an idea that probably the writers had in terms of handling everything with care, was when Jack Delroy goes back and asks the audience of, you know, who fell for it, who was kind of under that hypnosis. And, you know, a lazy writer would, you know, would just be like, everyone, you know, says they were under the influence. But then you have those people that were like, no, not me, no, not me. And it's like, well, that seems even more authentic to me, to be like, you know, we are really looking at this and saying, okay, we're going to handle this very authentically. And, you know, that's the way it would be, you know, and then kind of just going into those tapes and seeing that performance. So, you know, I think that worm scene for me, yes, as we get further into that supernatural element, it is totally, you know, goes really in left field. But I think that start of it with the worms for me is probably going to be my favorite from this.
Yeah, it's a really solid sequence, and I agree with you there. Another one, we kind of jumped through this real quick just because for time's sake, but you know, one of the sequences that actually I thought really affected me was Christu, when he started seizing and spitting up that black goo. Like, that was something that just really caught me out of left field. And I honestly, like, when he first got on screen, he annoyed the hell out of me. And I think they're supposed to. I found his character to be, I was just kind of like,
He's
you know,
pretentious, all-knowing, you know?
pretentious, all-knowing, goofy.
He played it so good, dude.
Oh,
He did,
absolutely.
and that's when I found myself, you know, understanding. It's like, okay, I'm supposed to feel this way. I'm very much supposed to be like, okay, this guy's a douchebag. But then once the actual, like, when he has that actual connection and you sense that fear, that actor killed it. Like, honestly, when he
Yeah.
was sitting in the chair sweating, he absolutely sold it so well. And I thought that was a really, really great and effective sequence. And then, yeah, I do want to clarify, we've been calling her June, but it was Lily. Was the little girl. June is
June
the
is
doctor.
yeah.
I just don't want us to get eaten up in the comments by that. And I have the luxury of MVP in front of me, so
They're still not going to hear this part anyway.
Right?
So.
Yeah, they've already clicked it off. But no, I think that's great. I know a lot of the money shots in the trailer are that initial kind of unveiling of the of Lily being the demon and kind of showing the face and everything, which I think is great. It's a really fun sequence. It's really well done. The part that I want to touch on with that, though, is, again, when we're sticking to this aesthetic, when they are like, we're gonna roll the clip from that documentary that they did on the cult. I loved that, and I loved how it switched the tone immensely. It felt like an old 70s doc. Like, the footage was just like really dirty, really grainy, and you could just tell it genuinely felt like it was shot by another team.
Xander Diabo.
Yeah.
That's what his name was. For Abraxas.
Yeah, and they actually talk about that a little bit in our interview, so I'm going to switch to a clip for that real quick. But I was curious, was this always a found footage film in mind? Was this something that you guys were like, it has to have some found footage elements in it, kind of mockumentary elements, or was there ever a version that was like, you know, just straight standards filmmaking?
No, there wasn't. No, we always imagined this was going to be, you know, the lost master tape. And look, I think originally maybe we didn't have the prologue, and maybe the ad breaks were treated a little differently. We were just going to be very true to the form and start and finish with our TV show. But yeah, I don't think the word found footage was kind of in our heads as we set about writing it.
Yeah. We didn't say to ourselves, let's make a really cool found footage film. It was, let's make a really good movie with a great story and a great bunch of characters. And it being set, you know, during over the course of this TV episode of late night TV, what better way to you know, document that than just see what those cameras saw on the night? To do it any other way kind of felt more contrived in a way. It's like you're always going to cover the story in that way anyway. You'd want to be able to cut to that. So, you know, why double up and do it two different ways? Just do it one way and do it right.
When you guys were approaching this, was that ever a hesitation for you to say, you know, do we have a character connection here with Jack Delroy as well as the cast of characters?
Yeah. Look, I think we felt, you know, there was an early draft where we only really saw what the TV cameras saw. We didn't do the documentary behind the scenes stuff. But we felt we would be denying the audience important information and you know, emotionality or whatever you want to say about those characters, that we, you know, that was a way, like you say, peeling back the curtain and seeing what's going on, you know, because I think for Jack, the character he presents on when he's on air, he would see as being the real Jack, but then you see an even more real Jack backstage, and the way those two are linked or contrast or don't gel sometimes is kind of what makes, you know, him an interesting character in the film, kind of interesting too, I think. So, yeah, we just, whatever decisions we made, we thought we'll just embrace it, lean in, go all the way. No half measures with any of that stuff.
I mean, we sort of go to some small pains early on to say that this was a documentary shot by a French crew who are also involved in that little short film you see in the VT segment with the
Grove,
the Grove and the devil worshippers.
Yes.
So where was I going with that, Colin?
I've got no idea. I don't. Have we answered? I don't know. Did we answer the question?
Oh yeah, you answered it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's
So I'm curious, did any of you actually think that Christo was his head was gonna pop?
would have loved that, but I
Right.
feel like at the time it was it was going to be way too early in the film for something that crazy to happen. But like,
And I
yeah,
think I know why. And I was like trying to explain it to Christina because she was like, "Oh, I really want more to happen in this movie." Like, you know, and I'm like, "Yeah, but you have to remember they have to keep it grounded in reality because there's an actual audience. So they can't just like fly off the handle 20 minutes into the movie and then not keep the audience. If someone's head exploded on live TV, nobody would be in that theater, right? So you have that balance, and I bet you it was kind of like it was a hard writing balance for them to do that. So they had to find some in-between methods with storytelling.
absolutely. And you know, I think that the best part about Christo's kind of finality in the story is like we only hear shades of
I
what
know.
happened. They're only talking about him in the ambulance and just how gory and messy that all was. Like you never hear exactly what happened. So
Right.
honestly, I would not be surprised if his head exploded.
Right.
And, you know, I love that when Jack Delroy was, he's delivering some sort of monologue on stage, and we just hear the ambulance in the background, and he kind of like pauses for a second. Again, it's something that's so minor, but so well done because it's like writers had so much care for this to kind of be like, okay, we got to have that little unease, you know, because he breaks for 1 second as he understands, okay, they're taking Christo away. Actually, it's not.
I never
something that
actually
was a
connected
bit.
the two.
Yeah, and you know, for me, it was like when I had heard that, and then went back and listened, I was like, oh my gosh, and that's what I think. Those are those little intricacies like that are why I love this so much, is because you can tell that they went back and paid so much attention to it. And then, you know, as we talk about those cutscenes, when Carmichael Hague, again, so pretentious, all knowing, and then as soon as they tell him Christo's dead, and you can tell, as like Alex said, he starts kind of losing that confidence, and I think that's something that really did break him right there, because he's like, he was so confident when he's like talking with everyone and understanding, okay, Christo's you know, apprentice or whatever came out and talked to those ladies about, you know, their background and everything like that, and then it's like, okay, he's got his confidence back, but then he figures out that Christo's, you know, he's gone, you know, so it's like everything that he knew feels like it's been thrown out the window.
Maybe they do that because of the audience, and they were being very careful, not the audience like literal audience. I mean, like people who watch this movie, you know, because like Carr and Gus have those moments in the film where they're kind of like the ones that are kind of hanging on to reality a little bit. Because one of them's like, hey, we shouldn't mess with this, and the other one's like, none of this is real. So it's like putting the viewers in that perspective really quick to kind of like, you know, go over things that they may be thinking while they're watching the movie. So
no, I like that, and I did not actually pick up on the ambulance thing, but that's actually really cool. And you know, honestly, I think that this is a good time that we should honestly thank our overlords, the people who gave us the access here, because that is the benefit of having screener access, is you get to kind of go back, revisit, really dissect, and get into this. But yeah, I want to thank IFC, Shudder, and Strike Media for setting this all up for us, guys. We do appreciate it. Yeah, we definitely said that in our review as well, but it needs to be said here. But yeah, I think kind of getting into the final moments of the film. Now, this is, again, the minorly controversial part. I feel like this is more or less the make it or break it for people. It ends a little ambiguously. It ends a little, you know, I don't think it's unsatisfying. I thought it was very well rounded and kind of a perfect spot to end it, considering, you know, it's found footage in a way. It's the found footage angle. You know, where were you supposed to end it? And I found the final moments of the film to be incredibly shocking. And I do have a little piece after I let you guys run through it that I do want to touch with you, Alex, about a conversation we had off air before I saw it, because that's the moment that I think people were referencing. But I'll let you take it away first, Alex. Go ahead, give us your thoughts on just the final moments of the film, kind of leading in from once we start getting into the wide aspect ratio. You know, everything's going to hell. Let's say right when Lily starts to have her moment. Like everything from there forward.
Okay. Well, I will say that there is some things in my mind that I was connecting dots to other films that deal with the sort of theatrical or live experience. I was thinking of Cigarette Burns in a way. And so in my mind, I had preconceived like that was going to be a part of this movie in a way. So I think that I had to kind of watch this again to really detach that from the first watch that I had, because I was really kind of considering the audience was going to be a part of the doom, so to speak, to like tear people apart or go crazy. Although I do want to point out, did anybody notice that any of the people who were dressed up the like skeleton and the ghost, they were acting really weird in the movie?
I thought that they were cult members after a while. The
Right.
skeleton guy, especially because the way they focused on him, I thought like the reveal was going to be like the cult like had other followers,
Something, yeah.
survivors that were going to
They
come
were
in
not
and like
acting
try
normal
to.
at all.
I thought, and initially this is where my head went with it, and I haven't even gotten to talk to you about this, Luke, because we've been so busy. But like my initial thought with that was that the cult members were going to come back and they were going to basically like interrupt the show in the third act. Yeah. And that was what was going to trigger the stuff that we saw in the trailer with Lily a little bit, because you can see some of the third act in the trailer, just little snippets of that sequence. So my head being the movie person that I am, I'm obviously thinking about that, and I'm like, what could this be? Like, are they going to come in? Because they just intentionally like showed those people so much, but I think it was just because they were kind of creepy little costumes. So
there was Eduardo Sanchez, Blair Witch Project.
Yeah.
I asked him because there was like this controversy about found footage of were they in hell or not. And I said, I asked him because I had some friends argue about this. And he said, yeah, as soon as they crossed the Stickman Forest, they were in hell. So in my mind, when I saw those people in their sort of skeleton suits and the ghosts, they were already in hell the moment they crossed their version of the Stickman Forest in some way. And this was sort of Jack's hell, maybe?
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, like, it definitely, what do you think about all that, Luke?
You know, for me, it's one of those things where I think we probably won't ever get a definitive answer onto it. But, you know, as we go through the film and they keep going back to, you know, what happened in the forest, in the grove, you know, for me, I don't know necessarily if it's Abraxas or anything like that, but, you know, I always think, like, I don't know if, you know, as we talk about secret societies and things like that, like, there are always these people, like, even, these people that are dressed up that are keeping an eye on Jack Delroy, you know, to make sure that, when we come to collect, he's going to be where he's going to be, to make sure that we, you know, come and get what we need from him. So, you know, for me, I started kind of reading more so into that aspect of it to say, you know, as, you know, this offering, yes, we have it, but we need more from you. So I feel like it's going to kind of be this, not necessarily literal hell, but one of those things where to escape what happened in the grove. Yes, you've made this deal with the devil in a sense, and then at some point we're gonna come and get you. So I started kind of, who knows if that, I'm gonna watch it a handful more of times, but it's one of those things where I think I love that intrigue to it, where I don't think we're ever really gonna know for sure it's to exactly what the ending is really telling us. But you know, for me, it's something where, again, I went with Enigma, where it's something where it's so captivating. It's something where I'm going to continuously try to figure out, because it's one of those things, once that third act really hits you, and then we kind of really start settling into what Jack is seeing, I think it puts a completely different spin on it, because our heart's pounding, and then we almost have this kind of, where it goes down for a second. We're kind of just trying to understand everything. So, you know, I've always kind of read it maybe as those are cult members, but I really don't know. I'm not sure.
Well, maybe Minnie is definitely a sacrifice. I mean, because they kind of put their thumb on it. But yeah, maybe this goes, like I said, maybe it goes back further than the show. It just kind of all takes place at that part.
Yeah, and I think like that's the big piece of this for me, is like it's Minnie's definitely the sacrifice. I mean, that's pretty much what you can pull that just from her quick deterioration of health and everything like that. It's like that's pretty obvious if you've seen any kind of like film that involves a cult or sacrifices or a secret society of anything. It's like that. You get that. What really intrigued me. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I almost at one point thought Jack could have killed her.
That's what I was thinking too. There was a moment where I thought maybe they're gonna reveal that he like stabbed her, especially
because what's he doing out in the woods with an owl? Like, who are you?
Especially when they do the footage and they have it replay and you see her there for a minute. It's like, oh, she's getting revenge.
Right.
Maybe
she was
that's
in the
what
mirror
this is.
too. Did you notice that when the table blows
Oh
up?
yeah.
She was in the black mirror, the like reflecting black mirror that they used on the table.
Yeah, no, I really liked all of that. And once you get to that third act, once we get to the wide aspect ratio, which again, I was saying Spielbergian shots, I feel like that shot of the empty audience stand with the lights and the way it shot, that is the Spielberg shot for me. That just something about that feels like old 70s Spielberg. Like that's what really got me there. I saw somebody compare that same shot to that, and that has never left my mind because that's what I thought when I saw it. And then obviously we get very 2001 A Space Odyssey with him seeing his wife in the bed instead of him being in the bed, but and going there, and then he has to kill her. That cut and seeing him with the knife in the chest of the little girl. Now, this is that point I wanted to bring up, Alex, because we had a brief conversation where you had finished this before we started it.
Right.
And you were being very vague and kind. You didn't want to spoil everything for us. Thank you.
Of course.
And you said that people are saying that the ending is super controversial, and you think that it's crazy, but it's not. You're afraid that people are gonna go in with expectations of like, oh, it's so insane, it's so wild. When
right,
in all reality, it's pretty tame, I would say. I mean, it's nothing so far out of left field. It's not like a Barbarian style twist.
It's solid. It fits. It works. But I didn't think it was like people were like, I've never expected this. Like, I was like, I don't think it's really meant to be a twist. Although maybe because we're talking about all this weird stuff, maybe other people got stuff from it.
And the only reason I would say this is because if you think about it from like a general audience perspective, we're massive horror fans. We consume this genre of stuff all the time. So a film with these kind of elements, these themes, it's all very, we get that. That's our stuff. It's our bread and butter. So cutting to a quick shot, seeing our main character who's so likable, who we've, who they spend the whole film really making you sympathize for him, really making you fall in love with him, with a knife jammed into that little girl's heart. Maybe, just maybe, that's what they might have been referring to, because I could see some people who just don't watch the same bullshit we watch all the time, where it's like shit gets really rough, where
they don't cheer when kids get hurt.
Right? Yeah, it's like oh, it's so intense, it's so crazy. I don't know. You guys think I'm nuts, or because that's really where I think maybe people were getting that insinuation.
I don't mean to take away from it either when I say that, like, but the people that were saying that though kind of led me in an expectation level, and I think it kind of took away from my moment a little bit by them saying it like that.
And that's totally reasonable. I get that 100% because I've had films do that to me, which is why with this, other than like basic Twitter reviews and things that people I trust more or less, seeing their little blurps, online social media reactions mostly, that's all I would tune into. I'm not reading full reviews. I'm not looking into video reviews. It's like this was a special kind of hype for this movie. Luke, how you feeling about the final moments of the film there?
Looking at it, I think like you mentioned, where if it's a general audience going into this, it's not, I guess, seasoned with horror. I think something like Malignant's hard for a general audience to digest, where it's something that is kind of out of the box. If you didn't grow up watching, Brain Damage or Basket Case, it's kind of like one of those things where some of these, if you're the A24 route for the most part. I would say, if you're kind of into what they say is elevated horror, and it's kind of more of that kind of psychological stuff and not necessarily literal things
on the nose.
Yes, and where I think maybe this would be, as for us, at least I know personally, I think the film is so well paced up into that third act that it earns its stripes, that it can go outside of the box and do whatever it wants. And like Alex said, I think it works perfectly. So I think that could be, I think they're more so referring to, Lily's head splitting open and all this craziness going on, because it's a jarring thing, especially if you haven't watched a lot of horror stuff and you've only seen more so modern things where, I think there's a particular kind of tone to those things where sometimes people are, general audiences are not as fancy to step outside the box and really go, let's turn that volume up and really go with it. That's what Late Night with the Devil does in that third act is, everything's going crazy. Gus's head is being twisted and
so
Carmichael
sad.
Haig is being burned right in front of you. At that point, it earns its stripes. But, I think if you're in that general audience horror and you're sitting down to watch Late Night for the Devil and we turn that volume up, I think it could be a little hard for people to digest in terms, especially, and once you get to that ending where after he does stab her and he's just kind of standing there and it's just like,
it's a lot, and then it's just silence.
Yes, it's like you turn and then you're turning it back down to 1, and it's like one of those things where an audience can be like, what the hell did I just watch? Which, if you're not seasoned into that, I totally understand. But if you are in this kind of horror spectrum here and you've seen a lot of things like that, I think it works perfect.
Yeah, we sound very gatekeepy.
You mentioned the brain damage, right? Didn't you just say that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Henenlotter, you're thinking of the head when it like pops open and the light comes out, right?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, because that's a really good point. I didn't really think about it. They even do that in Brain Dead, the one with Bill Pullman, Bill Paxton, where he rips. Sorry, that's kind of a spoiler alert, but
all good.
But they have a similar situation in that.
But yeah, I really thought the ending was impactful. Honestly, it was one of those things where it's like, I don't want to be too over dramatic and say my jaw hit the floor or anything, but I did sit there and go, oh, I like that. It was like, I always appreciate when it's like the ending is so subtle and it's going to make me think, because it's kind of like, so in Jack's mind, he saw Lily's head split open. He saw all these horrible things happen, but it ends with him stabbing her. Maybe, just maybe, if we actually look at that master tape and it's all in all of its glory and everything, is it going to show maybe Jack killing all these people? I don't know.
Did he do something in the woods that caused all of this?
Exactly. There's a lot of questions.
Did he cause the death of his wife and that girl?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's so many questions. It's honestly another reason why I think I just fell in love with this movie, because I don't have all these answers. It's super fun to sit here, and we've been talking for 40 minutes, and there's still probably another 2 hours worth that we could talk about this, and just really dissect our thoughts and get into this. And that's like the sign of some of my favorite stuff when it comes to films in general, not just horror films.
Layered, thoughtful movie.
Talk about it. Yeah, you can really tell that there was time and effort put into this. When we're doing stuff, when we're writing or even just discussing things on the channel, it's always just, we have some like sets, like a thing of films or TV shows or books or something that we're always kind of consuming on the side. What were some of the biggest like inspirations for Late Night with the Devil? What were some of the films or books or anything that you guys were kind of in digesting while you were kind of writing or putting it together?
Good question.
You were reading a lot of books about late night TV. I know that much.
Well, I read all of Dick Cavett's, his autobiographies from the 70s and stuff about, but we just consumed as much Carson and Cavett and the Aussie versions. We had our guys in the 70s and 80s as well. So, we kind of, for that period of writing and research, you become experts for a while. And then once it's written, shot, made, finished, that's all that information's all gone. But Michelle Remembers. Remember, have you read that book, Michelle Remembers? You should check that one out. It's supposedly a true story about this woman who in the 70s was abducted by Satanists and held in a cage and had to go through all these bizarre rituals. And it was cock and bull. The whole thing was bullshit. And they were exposed in the early 80s. But they did the talk show circuit for a couple of years, her talking about, her partner or husband was the psychiatrist that she was seeing. And it was using all this sort of, age regression therapy, all this sort of 70s mumbo jumbo.
Pop psychology.
It was all bullshit. The whole thing was made up, but they made a killing. They sold this book, it was a bestseller, did the circuit, seminars. And that's kind of where we got a lot of I think the Lily and June story from.
Yeah.
Was a bit inspired by that. So all sorts of stuff, movie wise,
The viewing list was extensive. I mean, it goes back to, something like Face in the Crowd, an earlier film. But, lots of 70s cinema obviously influenced us, and likes of Network and King of Comedy, but the horror stuff as well, like
all the classics, The Exorcist, but even things like we're talking about Halloween 3, The Season of the Witch.
Oh, that's awesome.
But yeah, I mean that definitely found its way in there. And the other you were mentioning, remember The Howling?
The end scene of The Howling where Dee Wallace turns into the cute little werewolf. It occurred to me. I think I watched it recently. God, that's our film, but on a feature length kind of scale. So,
and yeah, guys, that's kind of a good spot, I would say, to kind of give our final closing thoughts here on Late Night with the Devil. Like I said, we could talk forever about this movie. I think we will continue to talk about this probably on this channel. Alex will talk about it on his channel. And I'm sure we'll have other people, as more people get to go out and see this film, who will want to discuss it. And I think that's the beauty of a movie like this, is it's entertaining. It's very, very nostalgic, but in the good way, not like the Star Wars way. It's very fun for horror fans, but I really think general audiences will connect with this as well. David Dastmalchian just puts himself on the map as not only a great character actor, but an excellent leading man. And I personally still, even after this conversation, it's only cemented itself further as my favorite film of the year so far, and I am so excited to own this thing on Blu-ray. Alex, your final thoughts on Late Night with the Devil?
While it may not be my favorite movie, I still say it is one of my favorite films this year. And I know that without a doubt. And if this is what we've got moving forward, well, hell, it's going to be a great year. You know what I mean? So
it's strong.
So far, this year is blowing last year out of the water, starting out the gate. I am a big fan of a lot of independent filmmaking, and I think that's where the heart of horror really kind of is. And I think that this film is one of those films that does something that's really unique, fun, different, and within its means to do something really creative and special. And it's something that you should go out into the theater and actually support. So if you get a chance, regardless of what your feelings are about anything, go support this movie, even if you've already seen it.
Absolutely. And Luke, your final thoughts?
They have only grown fonder as I watched it a second time. This one, like Alex said, such a strong start out of the gate here for 2024. This was such an anticipated film for me, and it did not disappoint. I actually, about a half hour into this film, regardless of its, you find these films absolutely well crafted if they're, perfect 5 stars, anything like that. There are films that you always want to go back to and you want to watch, and almost appointment viewing. This one, as I was about a half hour into it, I said this one has easily worked its way into my annual Halloween rotation. This is something that I'm going to be putting on probably maybe at 10 p.m. as we close up for Halloween, because I think it grabs that tone. It's just something that's so well done. You can get lost on it. It does feel like you're just watching a late night television show on Halloween night. And I think that would be the perfect end cap for your Halloween festivities. I think it's something where whether you're paying attention to it, just sitting down watching it, or you have it on in the background while you're doing anything else, I think it works so well because it encapsulates that tone so much. So, this one, it's sitting at the top of my list thus far. It could be knocked down a couple of notches, but easily as we wrap up 2024, I know this is going to be in that conversation of some of the best films that I've seen because it's so well crafted, it's so unique, it captures that 70s aesthetic in David Dastmalchian as well as the ensemble cast. No one disappoints. Just that interplay on set is just absolutely perfect. So for me, this one knock out of the park.
And I do gotta say, last year, Evil Dead Rise came out in March. I think honestly roundabout the same weekend.
You might be right.
And that was my favorite film of the year at that point. And that one rounded out, I think, at number 4 or 5 on my list at the end of the year.
Never know.
You never know where this is gonna lie. But I can safely say that I think, unless, like Alex said, it's been a bang up year so far. We've had things like, personally for us, Frogman, but stop motion, I know.
That's
really
mine.
won your heart. That won your heart, and I would love to talk with you for hours about that. We got to do a podcast episode, but yeah, I think that this is definitely going to be top 5 material, if not my favorite. We got to see. It's going to be a strong year. I got a lot of other things on there that are winning my heart, including Nosferatu. But yeah, I mean, this was one that I definitely agree with you, fellas. We need to go get as many people out there who can support this. Check it out. It's going to be a bang up theatrical experience for sure. And yeah, I think I was super impressed with this. I'm super happy that it did. Yeah,
you're going to pick up other stuff in the film that I didn't catch the first time. So.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, with this being a spoiler conversation, we want to get you guys involved too. So as you're watching this, I know you're probably at this point now like, well, I already watched it. But yes, as you are watching it, feel free to type down your thoughts, opinions, talk about specific scenes. We'll make sure to pop up in the comments and, you know, chime in as much as we can. And, you know, I definitely think that if you have seen this movie and you agree with us, push your friends, push your family, tell them, go check out Late Night with the Devil. Cause yeah, it's a special film. It's definitely unique and it's worth it. Alrighty. But that's going to wrap us up here. Alex.
Yes.
Since you are our guest, where can the folks who don't already know find you?
Well, anywhere Beyond the Void Horror Podcast or longlivethevoid.com. That's our home base. But yeah, we do a YouTube podcast. The podcast we just started doing a video podcast for, so definitely need some support for that one because we're just trying it out. So far, it's done really well. I may have gotten my goth industrial card pulled for saying that I wasn't a huge fan of The Crow, but you know, I didn't say that it was, you know, it's not a wild take. It's I back it up, and I also show a lot of support for it. But yeah, I would love to have you over on YouTube, whether it's the podcast, the website, wherever. We do a lot, and with these guys, thank you guys so much.
Oh, absolutely. Of course, you're welcome back anytime. And we do a live show every other Monday with us and our boy Evan from over at Rockland Graves. With the 4 of us, sometimes just 3 of us. Luke's a busy boy, but we sit down and we just talk horror movie news topics. Mostly with just you guys. It's been a lot of fun, and it's been great. We've been doing it for about a month, and we're just going to keep that energy going. So, as this is posting, we had a new show coming up on Monday, so you can find us all back here chatting again. And yeah, I mean, we got a lot of great stuff up on the channel, talking some trailers. In a Violent Nature, that's probably the next big, I would say Shudder film that we have to look forward to as far as theatrical release. Yeah, I was gonna say, I know you were gonna say Infested, but
Immaculate, but
Immaculate. But anyway, we're gonna wrap it up here. So definitely keep it right here on Splattercast. Go check out Beyond the Void. And yeah, that's going to wrap it up for me. So until next time, I am Dylan Newell.
And I'm Luke Janesco.
And I'm Alex King.
And stay scared.
Do the horse shit, gonna do it live. Cause Splattercast kick it every day they live. Splattercast, gonna smash your ass. 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 Splattercast, gonna smash your ass.